Today I'm going to share with you 4 steps so that you can overcome any painful emotion in 90 seconds or less. Now, there's a lot of times we get to these different experiences that just really stress us out. We get overwhelmed. I mean, each of us, we have a different flavor of pain that we often gravitate to. Sometimes, some of you, your flavor might be anger. Some of you might be worry and or stress or whatever that painful emotion is that you gravitate to and you go to more often. Like for me, I find that I get overwhelmed probably more than I would like to be. But today I'm going to share with you a simple 4-step process that can help you to overcome any of these painful emotions. What I did is recently I started a 90-second rule that the moment I started feeling suffering or I start feeling the pain or whatever that is, it triggers me to apply these 4 steps, and it helps me to overcome them. And it has been one of the greatest blessings that I've received in the last I learned this last year, and it was so helpful. So I'm excited to share this with you. But first, before we get into these 4 steps, I want to say my name is Enoch Leffingwell, and here at the Army of Youth, we are passionate about helping young people to identify their unique talents and to dedicate them to the Lord's service. If this is something that interests you, then I encourage you to subscribe and follow us on social so that you can get more messages just like this. So if you want to overcome your painful emotions, master your emotions, then you've came to the right place. Because Hebrews chapter 10 says that God wants to write his laws in 2 places. Where? In our minds, that's our thoughts, and our heart, that's our feelings. So there's 2 things combined that make up the moral character, and that is your thoughts and your feelings. A lot of times we hear in churches and different Christian circles a lot about the thoughts, but how often do we hear about the emotions? Because combined is what makes up the Christ-like character. And really, that's the only thing that we're going to be taking to heaven is our character, and there's 2 parts of it. We hear a lot about one. I know for me, for many years, I've heard a lot about the thoughts, but I didn't hear as much about the emotions. A lot of times, emotions, especially as men, we're like encouraged, like maybe let's stuff that under the rug, but the challenge is there's only so much you can fit under a rug, and it starts to bulge, and it just doesn't work very good. So we have to figure out not just how to ignore our feelings, but how to master them, how to control our emotions, and how to overcome these painful emotions so that we can start aligning our feelings with our faith and our faith with our feelings. How would you like to be able to get a grip on your emotions so that you don't have to be a victim to these things, but you can master your emotions? So these are the 4 simple steps. Number 1 is to change your motion. What do I mean by that? Your movement, your body, your physically what you do. Because here's why. Motion creates emotion. That is the root word of emotion. It is motion. It's how you move. Now, this could be your breathing has a big impact on your minds. This could be whether you're physically moving, or if you jump up and down, or if you go for a walk, or you exercise, or you move. Just some sort of movement is going to automatically, it's going to physiologically make a difference in the biochemistry, even like beyond what you do with your mind. Just moving alone is going to make a big difference for your emotions. I mean, think about someone who you've seen that was depressed. If I told you that there was someone who was depressed behind this curtain, and I would give you $100,000 if you can describe to me how they looked and what their physical movement looked like, then would you be able to do it? What would their eyes look like? Would they be up or would they be down? What would their breathing look like? Would it be deep and full, or would it be kind of shallow and low? What would their posture be? Would it be standing erect, or would it be kind of slumped down and slouched? Or would their movements be big and wide and kind of fast and energetic, or would it be slow, or if any movement at all? How would they look? You could even, just by seeing how they're moving, will tell you the type of emotion that they're having. And the same is true for our facial expressions. We have We have scores of facial expressions, but facial muscles, but how many of them are you using intentionally? Because how you move your face actually impacts your mood, studies have shown. And so movement is the first thing that you could do. Change your motion, and it will drastically change your emotion. The second thing is to change your focus. See, Matthew 7:7 says, "Seek and ye shall find." Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Now, our emotions are influenced by our focus, our thoughts. If the thoughts are wrong, the feelings will be wrong. So the thoughts and the feelings that combine make up the moral character. So if we really are going to control the emotions, we need to control the thoughts that produce the emotions. See, feelings follow focus. Change your focus, change your feelings. It's really that simple. So how do we change our focus? The thing that dictates your focus is questions. It's the questions that you ask about a situation. It's the meaning that you attach to the experience that you go through. For instance, is it when a problem comes up, or a painful experience, or an emotion, or some sort of trial comes your way, is this happening to you, or is this happening for you? Is this the end, or is this the beginning? Is this God punishing you, or is God answering your prayers? Are you losing something, or are you gaining? Because any time that you're feeling on loss, or you're focusing on what you don't have, or what you're missing, or what you're losing a friend, or losing a relationship, or losing an opportunity, or losing money, or losing something, that loss is going to create pain and suffering and sorrow and sadness. So if you when you change what it means to you, whatever the experience that may be getting you down, this could drastically change your emotions just by changing your focus, because that feelings follow focus. So that's a second step for overcoming painful emotions, is really guiding your thoughts and what the situation means to you. You cannot change your circumstances, but you can choose your reaction. And these are the 4 steps. Now the third step is to change your words. Proverbs 18:23 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. They that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. So a lot of this, whether we have death emotions or abundant or vibrant or beautiful emotions and joyful emotions, is really going to come down to your words, because words have an emotional charge to them. For instance, if I say, are you sure about that? That means a little different than, I don't think you're right, or you're wrong, or you're a liar. And if I say, like, you could feel it by the different intensity of the words that I'm using, right? So words have an emotional charge to them. And what I'm talking about with words is the conversation that goes on in your mind. There are 2 different types of beliefs. There's one that is a limiting belief that is often based on scarcity, or there are a second that I like to call liberating truths, that Jesus said in John chapter 8, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." It will liberate you, and you'll be free indeed. So when we're focusing on limiting beliefs, they usually start with words like I can't, I don't have enough, or they're based on scarcity, or I always make mistakes, or I never can do things right, or whatever it is. When you're faced with something and you're just feeling like I don't have enough time, or this I don't have enough, that is a limiting belief. A liberating truth would be like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, or God's grace is abundant in mercy. His strength is perfect in my weakness. And it's based on a principle of abundance. Jesus said in John 10:10, I came that you might have life and might have life more abundantly. So changing the words will actually change your emotions, because emotions follow the words. And so that is the third step. Now the fourth is one that people have a challenge with, but it is to actually pray for problems to practice. Now you might be like, wait a second, problems, I don't want those. I want to get away from that. Well, actually, This process, I say that you can change your emotions in 90 seconds or less, but when I first started, it was more like 9 hours or less. It takes, even though you may know these 4 steps, it's by practice. It's kind of like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better you'll get. It's not enough to just learn it, but practicing it is really where you will find the consistency is key, and practicing it is where the benefit comes from. So praying for opportunities. Problems are opportunities to practice and to get better. You have to get your reps in. You have to be able to, if you're not good at something, do it 100 times and you'll get better. That's Hebrews 5:14. By reason of use, you'll have your senses strengthened to be able to overcome these painful emotions. So I recommend to pray for problems, for trials, to be able to practice. And I'll give you an example. So this just happened to me today. You see, I have a challenge with making phone calls. Phone calls are my least favorite way to communicate. And I was particularly having a challenge today, as like my schedule, I have specifically designed my schedule to limit the phone calls that I have to make, and that I'm able to make. So it's just like these things drain me, it's exhausting, it's taxing, and I'm like, oh, I do not want to do that. I'd much rather message people and or listen to an audio message or something, but do not try to get me on the phone. That is not what I want to do. So that's one thing. But today I was particularly kind of overwhelmed, and I was writing in my account book. And in the account book, there's a section that we ask is the question number 4 in our morning conversation. We're praying to God, and we're just like recognizing what is a situation that might pose a challenge to me today. And then I realized that there's this one phone call with his doctor who wants to work together with the Army of Youth and help with this program that he's doing over in Spokane. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a great opportunity, right? But it also seems like there's a lot of things that could go wrong, something that's out of my comfort zone, things that I've never been engaged in, but I look forward to it. We have the same vision, same mission and drive, and it seems like a wonderful answer to prayer, but it's very uncomfortable for me. Not to mention, it's on the phone, so it's even more uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, that is really the biggest challenge of my day that I'm thinking of right now. And then the next question is like, how would Christ handle that? And I'm like, oh. And that's the way where it's like, this is change your question, change your focus. Now my focus isn't on me and my problem, my inability. Now it's on Christ, his abundance, his character, his life, his ability. And then I realized he would do it through prayer. He would persevere. He would surrender, and he would commit his ways to the Lord. And I'm like writing and I'm praying and I'm searching God for guidance. And as I'm doing this, he calls me, and he calls me early. He calls an hour early, and I was literally just thinking for the day, like I didn't prepare an agenda, what I was going to talk about, and I needed this time. And right as I was kind of like overwhelmed about this, then I get this call from my assistant, and she comes in and she's like, hey, the doctor wants to call. He said he's out an hour early. Would you like to call? And I'm like, oh, no. And I'm like, what do I do? And I was just thinking, like, I really would like to pray. I really need some time to pray. And then while we're having this conversation, we get another phone call. A phone call from an old friend of mine who is, we haven't been in touch very well. We didn't really end on good terms. And he was calling, and I was just thinking, like, wow, I wonder why he's calling. And so that's probably going to be some challenging conversation too. But I was praying for him about this time, and I've really been thinking about him lately, and praying that reconciliation and growth can happen. So he calls, and I'm like, whoa. And then she says, like, well, he's not available right now, but can I take a message? And then while she does that, hangs up, and then I get another phone call within this hour, and I'm like, no, I can't talk to the doctor right now. I'd much rather have it at the scheduled time that we had appointed. And then there was another a ministry leader who's calling me because he wants to enlist in the Army of Youth, which is another answer to prayer. And he's like raising his hand, like, here I am, Lord, send me. I want to participate. I want to develop my leadership skills in the Army of Youth and gain these skills so that I can lead souls to Jesus. I'm like, yeah, praise the Lord. But I'm like, that's 3 calls right within like this 10-minute span. And as the doctor's calling early, and then earlier this morning, it was a blessing, and I'm so excited to share that I was sharing with a one of the largest Christian YouTubers in this space, and which is Brother Attila from School for the Prophets YouTube channel, and he reaches millions of people with his ministry. And if you haven't seen From Babylon to America, that documentary, you got to check it out. It was really well done, and that's one of the documentaries that he publishes. So his wife commented on one of my Facebook posts this week about how if we don't overcome our childhood traumas, then these are going to affect our relationship today. And someone was like, how do I overcome my childhood traumas? What do I do? And I said, hey, I'll send you a private message, and I'll give you a resource to how to turn your trauma into a gift. So his wife commented like, hey, I want that resource too. So I sent it to her. And as she was going through it today, she's like, this was so helpful. This is powerful. She talked to her husband and shared. And so they reached out to me today, and they're like, hey, we love the way that you speak. We love the message that you have, and we would like to know if you would like to join the team, work together. We can do some collabs together, and we could help each other out. And I was like, wow, what an answer to prayer. Because literally in my account book, and friends, this is a direct answer to specific prayers. There is a question 9 that we say in the morning conversation every day. I've been handwriting this. It says, what are the big projects that I have to keep in mind that I want to take on, even if I have to procrastinate them on purpose today? And so what I've been writing every day is these interviews or collaborations where I could work with other influencers on these different platforms and guest speak on their platforms, or to be able to share, add value to them, and understand how I could be of service. So I'm praying for wisdom every day regarding that. And this happens, and then how does she end the message? Call my husband, because he would love to talk to you more about it. I'm like, oh, another phone call, and another way to try to process all of this. And so I'm like, oh, I feel so backed up in phone calls. And then there's this other guy who's on Facebook, and this dear brother, and he's commenting on my things, and he's saying like, hey, when can we talk on the phone? He's like, we gotta talk. And then he private messaged me on Instagram, we should talk. And then Facebook, we should talk. And I'm like, oh, okay. And not to mention backed up with all these other calls that I have even stopped thinking of. But it's just like all of a sudden, all these crushing calls were like upon me, and I was just feeling really overwhelmed. And I had less than an hour before my call with Dr. Torquato, which I'm super excited about. But I'm just like feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I need to go through this framework that I just taught you, how to overcome painful emotions in 90 seconds or less. So what do? I change my motion. I get up, and I'm like, I could pray inside, or I can go for a prayer walk. I'm going to go for a prayer walk. So I get a jacket, get ready to go outside, and as I'm walking, I'm moving, I'm breathing in the fresh air, open air, and I'm praying to the Lord, and I'm changing the focus. So now I'm asking myself a series of questions. And I remember 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. That means everything and all things. Now, let me ask you a question. Would God ask you to be thankful for something that would do you harm? Absolutely not. His thoughts towards you are thoughts of peace and not of evil, in Jeremiah 29:11. So, with that being said, we can assume that there's something about this that I can be thankful for. And sure enough, just by changing my question, it changed my life and changed my emotion, changed my day. And I asked, what could I be grateful about this situation? Because I was clearly stressed and overwhelmed. And as I was thinking, I was like, well, there's a lot of answered prayer here. One, I got a trial because I've been praying for trials. That's step 4. Praise the Lord. God's answering my prayers. And then second, I have opportunity to be able to speak with the brother who I appreciate his ministry, like what he does, and I'm glad we get to work together. And then third, this doctor, we see that there's actually a lot we can contribute to his ministry, to his school, and what he's doing, and he wants to contribute to us, and that seems like an answer to prayer. And it just seems like, as I was going through, I remember that I could either be overwhelmed or I could be grateful, but I can't be both at the same time. You could be stressed or you could be grateful, but you can't be both at the same time. So I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's because I'm not asking, what can I appreciate about this situation? So as soon as I shifted my focus, I started asking that, then it made it like instantly, like immediately, it started to make a difference. And I started to see things totally different than before. And I was just recognizing that, the problems I'm facing today are not the same problems that I was facing before. These are actually higher quality problems. These are better problems, and I see that this is moving the mission forward. So it very quickly changed my overwhelm to overjoy. And I was like, okay, now I'm thinking, now what is the result? What's the impact that's going to happen? What is the difference it's going to make in the lives of those who, as a result of these calls and connections? And then I was looking at the results. I'm like, yeah, souls in the kingdom, blessing others, having more impact. I'm like, I love this. I'm excited. And so immediately it shifted my emotions and my thoughts towards this, and it made it so much more enjoyable. Where I was ready, I was equipped, I was able to put together an outline or an agenda of being able to talk with the doctor. It went really well. And I look forward to taking on some of the next calls too. But do pray for me. This is my prayer request to you. Pray that God could help me to overcome my tendency to want to avoid phone calls and to really prioritize these phone calls that really can help move the mission forward and not be so adverse to this. But this, my friends, has been the 4 steps to overcome any painful emotion in 90 seconds or less. Again, number 1 is to change your motion. Makes a big difference. Number 2, change your focus. And number 3, change your words. Number 4, to pray for problems to practice. And when you do these 4, it is not overnight, but you practice. I would encourage you to watch this video again so that you could kind of go over this again and then watch it again when you're able to take notes. And then in your devotion, study it out and search it for like a week or so and search in the scriptures and try to practice and then go share with someone who you know. You could share this video and let them know and then talk about it together. Or share with them your notes that you took and say, hey, can I teach you what I've been studying my devotions lately? And then share and help solve someone else's problem. It'll make a big difference in your life of whether you will actually take this from knowledge to implementation. Because knowledge isn't power, it's potential power. It becomes power when you implement, when you apply that knowledge that you have. So friends, if you want a tool to help you to apply the knowledge you're learning and to be able to keep track of your emotions, we have this Live Your Calling Daily account book, and I'd love to get you a copy. We could ship this in just about any location in the world almost, and I would love to get you a copy. This is helps you to be able to ask the questions and learn the specific questions to overcome painful emotions and turn your problems into blessings and your tests into testimonies. And each time when you go through these difficulties, how you can ask specific, intentional, biblical-based problem-solving questions to help you to find solutions that you otherwise wouldn't if you didn't have a tool like this. It's a system that's proven, and it trains your mind every day to ask a series of questions so it can become second nature a lot faster. So if you want to master your emotions, you want to overcome your feelings, to align your faith with your feelings, I encourage you to grab your copy of the Live Your Calling Daily account book. All you have to do is go to the website, thearmyofyouth.com/account book, and you can grab your copy today. That's again, thearmyofyouth.com/account book, and I would love to get this to you. And remember, friends, as always, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.